World War II, fought between 1939 and 1945, was the deadliest and most widespread conflict in human history. It reshaped the global order, caused over 70 million deaths, and led to the rise of the United States and Soviet Union as superpowers. But to understand why it happened, we must look beyond the date of Germany's invasion of Poland. The roots of the war lie deep in the outcomes of World War I, economic turmoil, the rise of extremist ideologies, failed diplomacy, and the ambitions of authoritarian regimes. This document explores these complex causes in detail, tracing how a world wounded by one war stumbled, almost inevitably, into another. The Treaty of Versailles, 1919, formally ended World War I, but planted the seeds of the next. Germany, the defeated power, was forced to accept war guilt, pay enormous reparations, surrender territories, and reduce its military forces. The treaty humiliated the German population and crippled the economy, fostering resentment and a desire for revenge. Many Germans viewed the treaty not as a path to peace, but as a national disgrace. Disintegration of empires. World War I shattered empires. The Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, and German empires all collapsed. This led to the creation of new, unstable states in Central and Eastern Europe. Ethnic minorities were scattered across borders, and nationalistic tensions simmered. Political instability became rampant, especially in the newly formed Weimar Republic, Germany, and successor states like Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia. The League of Nations weakness. Created to prevent future conflicts, the League of Nations lacked authority, military power, and the participation of major players like the United States. It proved ineffective at resolving international disputes and deterring aggression, as seen in its inability to prevent Japan's invasion of Manchuria, 1931, and Italy's invasion of Ethiopia, 1935. The Wall Street crash of 1929 triggered a worldwide economic crisis. Unemployment soared, banks failed, and trade collapsed. In Germany, already burdened by reparations and inflation, the Depression devastated the economy. Poverty and hopelessness led many to seek radical solutions. Rise of extremist parties. In Germany, the Nazis exploited economic despair, promising jobs, national pride, and the undoing of Versailles. Adolf Hitler's rhetoric blamed Jews, communists, and foreign powers for Germany's problems. By 1933, Hitler became chancellor and soon consolidated dictatorial power. Similar trends occurred elsewhere. Fascist regimes rose in Italy under Mussolini and in Japan under militarist leaders. Under Hitler, Germany pursued rearmament and territorial expansion. Hitler's ideology, laid out in Mein Kampf, included racial purity, anti-Semitism, anti-communism, and the pursuit of Lebensraum, living space, in Eastern Europe. Germany left the League of Nations in 1933, reoccupied the Rhineland in 1936, and formed the Rome-Berlin axis with Italy. Fascist Italy. Benito Mussolini came to power in 1922, establishing a totalitarian state focused on reviving the Roman Empire. Italy's aggression in Africa and alliance with Germany aligned it with the fascist bloc. Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935, showcasing the League's impotence. Imperial Japan. Japan, driven by militarism and economic need, invaded Manchuria in 1931 and China in 1937, seeking resources and dominance in Asia. These invasions horrified the world, but were met with limited response. Japan's expansionism paralleled Germany's in Europe. Britain and France, still reeling from World War I, prioritized peace and economic recovery over confrontation. Many politicians believed that the Treaty of Versailles had been too harsh and sought to appease Germany to avoid another war. Key moments of appeasement. Remilitarization of the Rhineland. 1936 Germany violated the treaty by sending troops into the demilitarized Rhineland. France and Britain did nothing. Anschluss. 1938 Germany annexed Austria with no resistance. Munich Agreement. 1938 Britain and France allowed Germany to take the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia, believing Hitler's territorial demands would end there. Failure of appeasement. Appeasement emboldened Hitler. Each unopposed aggression convinced him the West would not intervene. By 1939, Germany had taken over Czechoslovakia in full, violating the Munich Agreement. The Nazi-Soviet Pact, Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. In August 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed a non-aggression pact, shocking the world. Secret clauses divided Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. This pact allowed Hitler to attack Poland without fear of Soviet intervention. Invasion of Poland. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland using blitzkrieg tactics, lightning-fast attacks combining air power, tanks, and infantry. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Germany, marking the official beginning of World War II. Soviet invasion. On September 17, 1939, the Soviet Union invaded eastern Poland. Poland was quickly divided between the two powers. The West, though allied with Poland, could do little to help, and the country was overrun in weeks. World War II did not begin with a single event. It was the culmination of decades of unresolved conflict, economic devastation, ideological extremism, and failed diplomacy. The Treaty of Versailles aimed to end war, but instead sowed the seeds of the next. The Great Depression made nations vulnerable to radical leaders. Appeasement emboldened aggressors. And when democratic nations finally drew a line, at Poland, it was already too late to prevent the most devastating war in human history. Understanding why World War II happened is crucial, not only to honor those who suffered and died, but to ensure the world remains vigilant against the forces that could spark another global catastrophe. History teaches that peace is fragile, and that justice, cooperation, and truth must be defended with vigilance. 1940, Germany conquered Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. 1941, Hitler invaded the Soviet Union in Operation Barbarossa. Meanwhile, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor in December, prompting U.S. entry into the war. By 1942, the war had engulfed Europe, North Africa, the Soviet Union, and the Pacific. Ideological war. World War II was not just a clash of armies but of ideologies. Fascism versus democracy and communism. It was also a genocidal war. The Holocaust, Hitler's campaign to exterminate Jews and other minorities, resulted in the deaths of 6 million Jews and millions more others.